today, breaking down President Biden's very lively speech last night. Also, Tim Scott gets a lot of hell from liberals for saying America is not a racist country. He could have gotten some racist insults hurled his way. We've got a lot coming up, and it starts right now. Welcome to the News and Why It Matters. I'm Sarah Gonzalez, and it is Thursday, which means we have Stu Burgier of Stu Does America and Pat Gray of Pat Gray Unleashed on at the same time in the same place.
Very exciting.
It's Thursday.
Very exciting to us and to everyone else.
Pat, do you?
I'm speechless. It's so exciting.
Pat always, I'm sorry, I have to. Pat always walks on here and he's like,
I was thrilled to be here. I was thrilled to be. I told you that. I said I'm even more excited than usual.
He did say it. He did say those words. It's true. All right. So, we'll try to make it easy for you guys. We've just got a bunch of clips from last night's amazing, lively, just incredible speech from President Biden, which is what you would have heard if you would listen to the mainstream media after his speech. I know there were some people who were really like, God, it's the best speech of my lifetime. But we're going to be getting into some of the, when I say highlights, I really mean lowlights, but some of the highlights from that speech. But just right off the bat, did you guys even, you watched it because you were here for the live coverage.
We did live coverage.
I bailed on that, so... Sorry.
That hurts because I was in a lot of pain, physically painful speech to watch. And it's weird, you're right, there are a few people who seem to think it was really good, which I guess if I'm a liberal, I might look at that and say, well, a lot of the policies are there. I mean, it wasn't a good speech, but okay, I like the direction. I don't see how you could be excited about that. It's like Barack Obama was always praised as this incredible orator, right?
Yes.
And I didn't really get that either. But it's like I didn't get an opera singer, Placido Domingo. I don't get it, but I can understand why someone might get it. It's certainly some major talent the guy has or whatever. I really don't get it with Joe Biden. I can't even, how anyone could see that as anything other than an absolute, snooze fest. I mean, it was so boring. He's so bad. It's so dull. Now, this is a grand strategy, in my view, in that they've done a very good job. They know the reason they won the election is because Donald Trump was Donald Trump, and Joe Biden is not Donald Trump.
Yeah, their entire platform is still.
I'm just not him. I swear, I'm not him. I'm another guy. Yeah. And so he's acting the opposite of that. He's not in everyone's life with every tweet. And I hate all of his policies, but it's a really smart strategy. Put people to sleep and then do the most extreme radical things any president has ever done in history. And he's on the he introduced $5 trillion of spending in one speech.
Just the 5, though.
Just the 5. It wasn't 50. Just the 5. No one else has done anything like that in history when you're talking about these numbers. And most people, I think, now, you, of course, know all this information, so you didn't necessarily need to make it through the speech. But I think the average American who doesn't know these programs, started watching it, got 5 minutes in, was like, all right, I can't watch this anymore, tuned out and missed a real heaping scoop of radicalism. And their great-great-great-grandchildren, their savings going away. And I don't think they would have liked it if they hung around.
Would you have to wonder, Pat, was that part of the plan, not from Joe Biden, but from whoever is pulling his strings of just this is going to be perfect. This guy is so boring. No one's going to hear all this stuff that we have planned for them.
Yeah, I don't know how you get away with being such a Marxist. Yeah. And so openly Marxist and so openly for taxation, and then expect the American people to respond positively to that, unless we've just changed so much as a country now that as long as you think it's not you don't care what's happening to other people, how badly they're getting taxed. He's trying to set up, it's class warfare. It's classic class warfare right out of the Marx playbook. And he just pretends as though nobody making less than $400,000 a year is going to be touched by this. It's going to be somebody else. Don't worry about it. Well, they've already basically proven it's going to be under $200,000. And you can't raise $5 trillion just taxing rich. You can't. He's going to have to tax everybody.
Which is such a disconnect, I think, with the average American who is only half paying attention to politics, doesn't really understand economics. I think it's safe to say the average American really doesn't. And they hear this repeated mantra of just, the rich will pay for it. The wealthy needs to pay their fair share. They have to pay their fair share. And they just think that the money, they just have it all. And Stu, as you pointed out, $5 trillion, like you can't, it's just the rich people are not going to pay for all this.
No. They can't.
No way. It's mathematically impossible.
It's impossible.
Quite obviously. I mean, it's more than our entire budget.
Right.
I mean, so you're more than doubling the budget. I mean, it's spread out over several years.
Well, those loopholes, those tax loopholes, man.
Those are really bad.
They're getting away with a lot.
Really quick, though, on the approach, one other thing on this. One of the things, if you were going to be, as a conservative, critical of Trump, you might say, here's a guy who was very, very outspoken in ways you really liked. Really pro-life, really pro-Second Amendment. Like, he was talking about that stuff all the time, and it made them all priorities. So we were constantly in these, like, big battles with the left over real, fundamental, important issues. The criticism you might lay at the feet of Trump is that he got basically one piece of legislation passed in 4 years, which was a moderate tax cut. Right? He did some other things on executive orders, but you could be critical with him there. Biden is the exact reverse. He's never in your life. He's taken the Trump package, a high level tone and not necessarily a huge legislative record, and is trying to reverse it. He is a very calming tone, right? He's not
like he's practically
almost
dead.
Asleep. He's almost asleep. He literally almost put Jason Buttrill to sleep on set last night. I could see him drifting off. It was that bad. He's like a sleeping pill, but then on the other hand is doing incredibly radical things, has already had a $1.9 trillion bill through. He's going to get one of these two at least done, I think, as well, because they're only going to need 50 votes and they'll get them. They're both interesting strategies. They both have benefits and drawbacks. But right now, until the American people wake up to this, which might take 2 years, they can get a lot of stuff done, and it's scary stuff. He wants to be FDR, and he wants that to be the package, and that people will look back at him and say that guy was a transformational president. And while I know a lot of the people around him are drawing up the details, he's not that guy. He does want it. He's 1,000 years old. He knows he's never going to have to pay for any of these things. If these programs collapse in a decade, he's not going to be around to see them. So I really do think that he wants to be that transformational guy, and he sees this as an opportunity.
Yeah. Let's go through some of the highlights, lowlights, however you prefer to call them. You know what, Control, I know I said we were going to go, let me just say this really quickly because I don't want to spend the whole 2 minutes. Biden said that in his speech that there were more job increases in his first 100 days compared to any other president's first 100 days. And America is moving forward thanks to investments that the government was able to make. So good job, government. Thank you so much for taking care of us. But let's go to the next one where Biden is talking about his American Rescue Plan and how many women have had to leave the workforce. Let's listen to that.
The American Jobs Plan will help millions of people get back to their jobs and back to their careers. 2 million women have dropped out of the workforce during this pandemic. 2 million. And too often because they couldn't get the care they needed to care for their child or care for an elderly parent who needs help. 800,000 families are on the Medicare waiting list right now to get home care for their aging parent or loved one with disability. If you think it's not important, check out in your own district, Democrat or Republican. Democrat or Republican voters. Their great concern, almost as much as their children, is taking care of an elderly loved one
so bad.
Who can't be left alone. Medicaid contemplated it, but this plan is going to help those families and create jobs for our caregivers with better wages and better benefits, continuing a cycle of growth. For too long, we've failed to use the most important word when it comes to meeting the climate crisis. Jobs. Jobs. Jobs.
And Stu is asleep. He's fallen asleep. Listening to the beginning of that, it just got like, I was trying really hard not to fall asleep too. But the beginning of it, I just felt full of rage because he's talking about all of these women who had to leave the workforce to take care of the children that you guys kept out of school. And I think still don't want them to come back and won't stand up to the teachers' unions who control you and are in your back pocket, Joe. So it's just maddening to hear him talking about that. Like the government created that problem.
Yes.
And now he's saying we're going to save you from the problem that we created.
Right. The science has never been on the side of keeping kids at home. And certainly after if you get to the end of that first year, certainly starting the next year, where there's no excuse to do it, they did it anyway in tons of states. It's interesting that's how you saw that, because that's a great point. I kind of looked at it as like, it's a constant thing the left does, which is put staying at home with your children in this second place failure sort of position. Like, if you screw up your career, you can always go back and be with your kid or one of your relatives. I mean, you always got that to fall back on. Like, maybe some of the moms decided they went through a situation like this and said, maybe I want to be with my family more. Mm-hmm. Maybe I don't want to be out working that job. Maybe, there's...
Well, I pulled my kid from school.
Yeah.
After all of this, because I was like, I don't want my son in this indoctrinated crap, and I pulled him and then homeschooled him. So I mean, I'm still working, but I know there are a lot of moms who are in that position.
Yeah.
So
it's just fascinating to see it's I don't want to be punished with a baby type of view, right? Like where they look at this family thing as like, you got this family thing. Obviously, you'd rather be an accountant. But if you have to take care of your kid, I guess you could do that too. It's always this second place sort of like fallback failure role they put that in, which is always disturbing to me.
Yeah. That's what Marxists do, though. They disparage the family. That's why on the Black Lives Matter website, who are trained Marxists, one of their goals was to destroy the Western-based traditional family unit. That was one of their stated goals on their website before they finally took it down. They took that part out because they got a lot of flack for it. But that's Marxism. Marxism's goal is to destroy the family unit because it's the building block of civilization. And if they can do that, then they can destroy us.
So going back to the childcare point, so he also wants to mandate that all childcare workers get a $15 minimum wage. At least. And I'm like, so you want the women to go back to work, but you're going to price out a bunch of their daycares out of the market entirely, because there are a lot of places that are not going to be able to pay their people $15 an hour.
Yeah.
So if you want you're claiming you want the women to get back to work, but you're letting the teachers unions keep schools shut down, and you're going to price a bunch of their childcare options completely out of the market. Yes, I'm sure you really want women to get back to work. It's incredible.
I'll give you an example of what this looks like. I have a friend who lived down here in a lower cost state. Their family, they decided to move up north to take a job that paid about 30% more money. So they went up there. First of all, taxes hit them. So that margin got skimmed quite a bit, and then they had to deal with childcare, and childcare was 60% more expensive. So there was the wife in the situation was only working part time at the time, and she decided not really a point, because if I work part time, then I'm taking all that money and just giving it to the child care facility. I'd rather be home with my kid.
Right.
So, it was a decision she was happy with, but like it was, you start pricing people out of child care, they're going to drop out of the workforce more, which might be a good thing or a bad thing, but like you're just this is why you don't manipulate the market at a central place. It doesn't work. I promise you that Joe Biden is not smart enough to figure this out. I promise you. In fact, I promise you no one in history, no matter how smart they are, can figure this out. You can't outsmart the markets. Yeah. And that's what's so great about capitalism. It's what's so great about our founders, who understood that these things could not be controlled by one individual. The left does not have that knowledge.
Yeah. All right, we've got more to come from the speech last night. Maybe like congrats or sorry, depending on how you feel about that. But first, we want to thank our sponsor, Freedom Project Academy. So, we were talking about childcare. We were talking about teachers keeping the schools shut down. Well, sometimes we're like, hey, maybe we should keep the schools shut down because your kids are being taught crazy things in school, like there's no difference between boys and girls. Every white person is racist. By the way, math is racist too, so you probably shouldn't learn it. Supporting Black Lives Matter and social justice are more important than reading, writing, arithmetic. And then, of course, the teachers' unions just got tens of billions in COVID cash to push all of this into your public school classrooms, perhaps remotely, because they still don't want to get their asses back to school. You don't want this for your kids, all right? That is why you need to consider Freedom Project Academy. Freedom Project Academy has perfected live online learning for more than a decade. They are built on Judeo-Christian values, classical curriculum, and they are going to provide mastery of subject matter, not the leftist propaganda. You can go to freedomforschool.com. It is freedomforschool.com to request your free information packet. I'm telling you guys, really, we're about to move into summer and it's about to be a whole new school year. Now is the time to really reevaluate what your child is learning in the school that they are in and whether or not they'd be better served with a much better education and less indoctrination. You can go to freedomforschool.com. That is freedomforschool.com. All right. So getting back into the speech from last night. Now, we couldn't have a joint address without bringing up the horrible problem in this country, the worst problem plaguing this country, I would personally say, which is, of course, white supremacy.
Thank you.
Yes. So finally, we're bringing it up and talking about it.
When are we going to have a conversation about it?
We should talk about it.
We should talk about it at some point. It's like we have to.
People have been avoiding talking about it for the past couple hundred years.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's never been brought up before.
No.
And I think we should bring it up now.
So it's going to surprise people when we start talking about it.
Yeah.
But it needs to be talked about. We need to have a conversation.
Well, thankfully, we have President Biden who led the way there. Let's listen to what he had to say.
White supremacy is terrorism. We're not going to ignore that either.
What?
My fellow Americans, look, we have to come together to heal the soul of this nation. It was nearly a year ago before her father's funeral when I spoke with Gianna Floyd, George Floyd's young daughter. She's a little tight, so I was kneeling down to talk to her.
God.
I can't take it.
So agonizing.
So I could look her in the eye.
Okay.
She looked at me, she said, "My daddy changed the world." Well, after the conviction of George Floyd's murderer, we can see how right she was if we have the courage to act as a Congress. We've all seen the knee of injustice on the neck of Black Americans. Now's our opportunity to make some real progress. The vast majority of men and women wearing a uniform and a badge serve our communities, and they serve them honorably.
Interesting. So white supremacy is terrorism. But also, I do find it fascinating that they continue to make George Floyd into this heroic martyr.
Yeah, so weird. They're doing that to all victims of
even
white supremacy.
Yeah, even those.
Which, by the way, just a reminder here, you guys, racism was never an element that was brought up in the Chauvin trial.
Right.
Like, never did they once talk about it.
So important to note that.
Like,
they had no evidence.
No,
That's
none.
the only reason they didn't bring it up was because they had no evidence.
Right.
As admitted by even Keith Ellison in Minnesota.
Yeah.
He said, I would have brought it up. I just didn't have anybody saying it. I didn't have any evidence of it, so we didn't use it.
Yeah.
You didn't have any evidence of racism? Why are we talking about this then?
Cities burned. Joe Biden is using it as an example of white supremacy and talking about how white supremacy is terrorism, yet there were literally no elements of racism brought up throughout the entire trial.
This is what he does. He sets up the false premise, and then you start arguing about the false premise. No, the premise is false. There was no racism proven or even alleged.
Right? Like Mark Furman, where famously said he had said the N-word before,
yeah, that was
like
some racism.
Right. And so they asked that question. It was out there. Now, that doesn't mean that he that he framed OJ because he was a racist, right? They had no evidence of that. but like it created a little bit of a doubt. Here, they didn't even have this.
They didn't even have him saying words like that.
They didn't even have him intentionally killing George Floyd.
Right.
They specifically charged him with unintentional murder. So the idea that that was a white supremacist thing is just living in Joe Biden's mind, right? It's just this thing he's made up in his head. Now, he's not the only one who's made it up in his head, but that doesn't make it any more real. It's fake. And now, we don't know. Maybe we'll find writings from Derek Chauvin 20 years in the future that he was writing on, Stormfront, is that what it's called? That's a Billy Joel album, isn't it? I don't know. It's either a Billy Joel album or it's a white supremacist website, one of the two. But I was very interested. I wonder if one of them named it after the other. I don't know. Anyway, so what?
Wow, this just got really deep.
Very deep. We really were like, you know what? Let's name it after the white supremacist site in 1978, before websites are invented. It would have been a strange series of events, but I will just say that that would be just as real as Joe Biden's opinion here. It makes no sense. It's not tied to reality. I can understand why some people would just assume it, right? If you have been digesting the media cycle after media cycle and not actually looking into these things individually, you might think, well, cops are killing white cops are killing black people all the time because they're racist. I've seen it on 100 different news reports. So this is the 101st. Okay, I believe it. Right? Like, I can understand how that happens to average people. It doesn't happen to Joe Biden, though. He absolutely knows what he's doing. He's doing it. He's trying to further his political futures by trying to rip us apart even further. It's despicable.
While
absolutely
he says
despicable.
he's trying to heal America. And that's the amazing part of it, too. That's a little ironic that as he's tearing us apart, he's saying he's putting us back together.
Great show of unity by Joe Biden.
And as he's saying he's moderate, he's being radical. I mean, this is a theme over and over again with Biden. He's lying to you all the time.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, it is interesting to see them keep talking about white supremacy. It's like, obviously he knows that the thing that happened to George Floyd did not have to do with white supremacy, but it feels a whole lot like there is about to be a huge push towards everything being white supremacy. Like anything that they don't like that may be done by white people, they're just going to call white supremacy because they've already drilled it into everyone. White supremacy is terrorism, white supremacy, I mean, this is like the FBI, we were having studies about white supremacy, like the white supremacy is the biggest problem in the entire country is, I mean, really how they're making it sound like. So can't they then just say everything is due to white supremacy?
And tie it into guns.
Right.
And these white supremacists have guns, and we got to get the guns out of the hands of the white supremacists.
Yeah.
They're setting it up nicely.
Yeah.
Well, all of that.
The left does this in reverse than the way we would do it, right? Like we would say, okay, here's the body of evidence to find out if that person is a racist, right?
Right.
What the left does, and they do this all the time, is to take the word that tests poorly, racism, and apply it to anything they don't want, Republican policies, right? A tax cut is racist, right? Makes no sense, but like we know people don't like racism, which proves we're not a racist country, I would argue. And we know it's the worst term ever to call someone, so they just call it and then apply it to policies. They do it in the reverse as well, when they say, well, we want to pass all these liberal policies. What word do people like? Infrastructure. So then everything is infrastructure, right? Their policies are all associated with good words, and our policies are all associated with bad words. It doesn't mean that they actually apply. They're not even trying to make them apply. I mean, like the racist one is such a great example. It's like, well, if you are colorblind, then that shows you're racist. It's like, well, you've just taken the word racism and completely reversed its meaning, and you act like we're not going to notice it, and so many people don't.
Yeah, well, that's the sad truth of it. All right, let's play one more. Let's play Biden talking about, of course, our voting being attacked and why we need to pass H.R. 1.
The soul of America, we need to protect the sacred right to vote.
Good sentence.
Most people. More people voted in the last presidential election than any time in American history. In the middle of the worst pandemic ever. It should be celebrated. Instead, it's being attacked. Congress should pass H.R. 1 and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and send it to my desk right away. The country supports it. And Congress should act now.
Pat, your thoughts?
I love how Obama was good at that, too. Country's behind it. The country wants it. People demand it. Everybody wants it. No, they don't. No, the country's not behind. The country has been, I think, in some cases, tricked a little bit by what H.R. 1 is all about and what the Georgia law is all about. And so they've done a pretty good job of spinning these things into being racist policies or voter suppression, and now we need to fix that with this H.R. 1, which would take away states' rights. I mean, it's unconstitutional and it's unconscionable, and hopefully we won't stand for it, but I'm afraid they're talking about this and the spending bills as being passed through reconciliation in the Senate, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah. It's interesting, too. I think you bring up a good point, Pat, that the country really, I don't think when you look at the data is behind it. All of the polling that I've seen with the Georgia law coming out and all of the polling suggests that even Black Americans are like, I think voter ID is a good thing.
Like 80%.
Right. I'm not stupid because I'm Black. I know how to get an ID. I have an ID. I
know
use
where
it
the
all
DMV
the time.
is.
Right. I agree with voter ID laws. And yet they keep, as Pat said, they keep perpetuating this idea that the country agrees with what Joe Biden is saying.
Yeah, look, I think people, generally speaking, like the general outline of making it easier to vote, right? They want to be able, they don't want to make it difficult. But again, these are basic, civic duties, right? Just like it's a kind of a pain in the butt to go get your car registered. I guess you could argue, I might have to wait in a little bit of a line. I might have to go to a place I don't normally go to, a town hall or something I don't normally go to, or some weird church to vote. That's not my church, and it's a little bit uncomfortable at times. But people who actually care don't have a problem voting. If they're allowed to vote, they don't have a problem voting. They have a million different ways, including provisional ballots, that even if you don't correctly have everything locked up, buttoned up at the time, you can still get your vote to count. They have absentee voting. They're like, oh, Texas, you have to have an excuse. One of the very few states you have to have an excuse to absentee vote, which, first of all, it's not a big hurdle. And to show you how dumb of a hurdle it is, one of the accepted excuses is you're going to be, quote, out of the county. Now, I work out of this county. I live 10 minutes away from here. I'm out of the county. Yes, I'm going to be out of the county that day.
Yeah.
This is not like you have to come up with here's my cancer scan and I can't make it to the polls. All you have to do is put the slightest amount of effort, showing that you have the slightest amount of caring for your vote, and you can vote. And what the left wants to do is to make it so people who have absolutely no interest and don't follow it all year long, the only thing they know is that Republicans are bad, can get something mailed to their house, and they can open it up and go, oh, cool, vote, Democrat, 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 sign, put it back in the mail in a pre-stamped envelope, so they have to put no effort into it because they don't care at all. That's what they want because they know they'll win those voters. They'll win the voters who don't think about the vote for the entire 4 years. And that's why they want them voting.
Yeah. Republicans have done a crappy job, I think, of combating this Georgia voter suppression bull crap. Why aren't they pointing out you can't even early vote?
I know.
In the president's home state of Delaware.
Tim Scott, I will say, did say that. He said it about New York, I think, last night. But at least
don't use New York. Use Delaware.
Yeah.
It's his stinking state.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of Tim Scott, we've got him up next. First, we want to thank Built Bar, which, and there's a lot of you cult members out there. You guys keep tweeting me pictures of your Built Bar packages when they're coming in.
It's a good cult.
So proud. It is a good
Built
cult.
Bar people, it's a good cult.
It is.
Yeah.
So there are many of you who have realized, if you're not in the club, please join it, that a protein bar doesn't have to taste like garbage. You can actually get a good tasting protein bar. Built Bars are all covered in 100% chocolate, and they're good for you. They're low in calories, low in carbs, high in protein, high in fiber. They've got a ton of different flavors to choose from. Join the club. Send me your pictures once you get your order of what flavors you got. I am loving getting them. Go to BuiltBar.com. Use promo code NEWS15 to get 15% off. It is BUILT bar, BuiltBar.com, promo code NEWS15. All right, Tim Scott delivered the rebuttal to President Biden's address last night, and he, brought up, I think, the point that we all feel like is a pretty good point, which is America is not a racist country. Got a lot of flack for it. Let's listen to a little bit of Tim Scott.
Today, Kids are being taught that the color of their skin defines them again. And if they look a certain way, they're an oppressor. From colleges to corporations to our culture, people are making money and gaining power by pretending we haven't made any progress at all, by doubling down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal. You know this stuff is wrong. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country. It's backwards to fight discrimination with different types of discrimination.
Yes.
And it's wrong to try to use our painful past to dishonestly shut down debates in the present.
I love that after this on Twitter, Uncle Tim was trending, which
As if they were trying to prove that America is a racist nation.
Right.
Oh, yes, we are. We can call you racist names.
Yeah, it's like, well, I guess one side
Right.
of us is racist, but it's not us.
Right.
So thank you for showing your true colors as always.
Unbelievable. I like Tim Scott. I think he's, he is a great. His story is a great freaking story, right? I mean, they try to keep picking it apart, but I mean, he talks
That's
about.
incredible, by the way.
Yeah, I know that's a weird one, like because he always says the same type of line, which is like from cotton to Congress in one generation or whatever it is, and he's an amazing story. They just look, it shows, and I think it proves that the woke thing. These accusations of racist are actually not real. Like we sometimes forget this. I think like we think they're insane and they think everything's racist. They actually don't think everything's racist at all. It's just a lie. They know it's not real. I mean, you can see when you look at things like this, the second there's a Republican, conservative or whatever. I mean, look what happened to Caitlyn Jenner. They praise every transgendered person for everything they do when they're on the left. Caitlyn Jenner, who's like, I'd like moderate taxes, is like, like some hardcore libertarian here, and Caitlyn Jenner is the worst person in the world and basically Uncle Tim of transgendered people, which I don't have I don't know what the term is. There is a term, I think, but I think there is, but I don't know what it is. My bottom line though is like, it's not like they actually they don't believe that a transgendered person should get the role of governor because they're transgendered. They don't think a senator should be senator because they're black. It's just that when that argument helps them, they use it. Here, you have a black senator and a transgendered gubernatorial candidate, and they don't like them because their policies are bad. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's how we are all the time. I don't hate Chuck Schumer less than I hate Joy Reid, right? Like they both suck in their own special way. Has nothing to do with the color of their skin. Their policies are terrible, and that's why I hate their policies. With Democrats, they actually, in a lot of ways, are similar. They just use the identity politics thing, which is a mirage. It's not real. They don't even believe it, but too many people fall for it. It works.
Pat.
You know what's amazing, too, is a few hours after Tim Scott makes this pronouncement, it's backed up by Kamala Harris on a morning show, who's asked, Tim Scott last night said that the United States is not a racist country. Do you agree with that? First of all, yes, let me say I do. The United States is not a racist country. There's
really
no blowback at all for her because she's on the right side of the ledger.
Wow.
Well, she's actually on the left side of the ledger, but
she's correct in this instance.
Yes.
In this instance.
She is right. But she gets no blowback on that.
Right.
Tim Scott is called racist names. He's dragged through the mud. He's attacked viciously. Kamala Harris says the same thing a few hours later, and it's perfectly fine. And they're both right. America's not a racist country.
Well, and I mean, no blowback from Kamala Harris, not just for saying that, but also for she has said the opposite many times.
True.
And no one wants to call her on that.
Right.
Because she's constantly talked about how racist we are.
That is kind of a good question. I mean, I doubt the person, I don't know who asked it, but whoever asked it was actually...
I think it was Stephanopoulos.
Okay, because that's a good question. I mean, it's good to get them on record to answer those things.
Kind of shocking that they asked it.
It was.
It's similar to the Keith Ellison thing we were talking about earlier. When ask him straight up, was this racist? Because in reality, of course, it's not true. So he can't say it's true, or at least he would have to dance around it a little bit. I like when they ask questions like that because put them on the spot. Like make them call the country racist.
Yeah.
Make them do it because that's what
and
the
she
way
didn't, which is great.
Yeah.
because, like you said, she has in the past. It's just what's convenient for her at that particular moment. What's going to help her
totally
at that particular moment.
Which is, so I feel like the both of them are like that. We've got the president who is really, really obviously like that, and Kamala as well. There's no one who is leading the country who you can go, okay, like Bernie Sanders. His ideas are insane, but at least you know where he stands on something, and he's not going to tell you the next day. Right? He's not going to tell you the next day. Yeah, you know what? I don't like Medicare for all anymore. I mean, he is all into what he says. With them, you just never know where they're going to go.
He's a socialist, and he's committed to it. Yeah, and that's really great.
Yeah, and it's so cute.
The entire administration is an experiment as to whether you can say you're not a socialist and still be one. Right. And Bernie, we know, says he's a socialist and is one, and people don't like that. He's trying to be a socialist without saying he's one. He's going to say he's in the middle. He going to say I'm a moderate. I'm reaching across the aisle, and just do all the things that Bernie Sanders was going to do anyway.
Just like Kamala. Do you remember when I forget what interview it was, but they asked if she was a socialist. You know, a lot of people are saying you're like the most liberal senator in the country, and she laughed.
And of course, that's what she does in every awkward place.
It's so funny. I'm just no, please. I'm so moderate, and you're like, what?
Right. But he is attempting to pass the most crazy liberal, progressive, leftist policies in the universe with all the spending and all the taxes. But in the middle of that speech last night, he said, I get in fights with people on my side of the aisle. They say sometimes people shouldn't be allowed to be millionaires and billionaires. I think you should be allowed to be a millionaire or billionaire, but you got to pay your fair share. That's a totally different approach than Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. It's much more effective, too.
Setting up the false premise that they don't pay their fair share.
It's a false premise completely.
So he's working the system again in that way.
All right, we've got more to come, but we got to take a break. We'll be back.
I don't think people should do that.
All right, a British Vogue article went a little bit viral, but for kind of the wrong reasons, I think. They asked the question, this was the headline, is having a baby in 2021 pure environmental vandalism? Because of course, we know the current climate emergency is so dire that you should consider it before procreating. Now, I would just like to point out that the author of this piece actually has already given birth to a baby, and I think plans to have more. So, but minor details. So for this
is your answer no?
Well,
not
apparently. Well, personally, but for all of you lemmings out here, for the scientifically engaged person, there are few questions more troubling when looking at the current climate emergency than that of having a baby. Whether your body throbs to reproduce, you passively believe that it is on the cards for you one day, or you actively seek to remain child-free, the declining health of the planet cannot help but factor in your thinking. So she says that before she got pregnant, that she worried feverishly about the strain on the Earth's resources that another Western child would add, which of course includes the food that he eats and the electricity that the baby uses. Because what about this crazy future if we don't have any water or crops? Your kid could grow up into this elderly person and not have any food. They're just going to be living in this total dystopia.
Unreal.
It really is crazy. But this is something now that they keep pushing. I know Joe Biden mentioned the climate change, the climate emergency in his speech. And this is our life now, I think, for the next, I wanted to say 3.5 years, and I just realized it's more than that. It's not even been half a year.
I spoke to Michael Schellenberger. I think you've had him on as well.
Yeah,
Pat.
that's great.
And he's great. He wrote a book called Apocalypse Never about the climate. And he, one of the reasons he did it, he was a Greenpeace, activist and total lefty, environmentalist. And I think he was
for
still
30 years
on the left.
I think he still identifies with the left.
Yeah. However, he's actually looked at the data and taken the time to look at it. And one of the reasons he decided to write this book, which is really he became pro-nuclear several years ago, which is out of step with some environmentalists inexplicably. But he decided to write this book of really going through and showing with the problems here. One of the reasons why he noticed there was actual depression in teens, including friends of his own kid. his own daughter, who were terrified by the fact that, like, why would I have a positive view of my future if it's going to be this climate hell that everyone tells me it is?
Greta Thunberg?
Greta Thunberg is a perfect example.
And the world's going to end in now 9 years.
Right.
Yeah.
The whole prevailing theory is that we've got 12 years or 10 years left, or now I think we're down to 9. And that's what they try to push. That's what they're... so many people, including AOC, have pushed that theory. And he looked into that. And he actually looked into the people who supposedly said it in the first place. And they didn't.
Yeah. I mean...
He was great.
Yeah, it's shocking. They didn't at all, by the way, on that one. But, like, even when you look at, like, the climate, the media will tell you, well, by the year 2100, we'll be, 14% less rich than, we'll take trillions of dollars out of our economy. And there are climate economists who say things like that. When you really look at it, though, they also say we're going to be much, much, much better off than we are today. I think the real number is like at the end of the century, we would be 450% better off than we are today without climate change, and 436% better off today than if we don't do anything. Now, first of all, of course, we're going to do some things, right? We're not going to just leave everyone on the coast if the water rises and such. All these things, but this is a much better future. Not to mention, we can help people now with real problems that are actually affecting them now. Things like malaria, for example, that are killing millions of people. We can help those problems go away much more cheaply than we can trying to control the temperature in a century from now. I mean, it's completely nuts. I think eventually this will be looked back at as we kind of look back at the population bomb of the 70s, right? Where it was just like, that was just a crazy, were we drunk? Were we all drunk back then? It's going to look insane.
Yeah, well, I think, I don't know. I call it a hunch, but I just feel a little bit like the left just really doesn't like babies.
They don't.
Just like babies.
Just really does not like the babies in the womb, babies when they come out, babies when they become children.
You want to be punished with a baby?
Yeah.
That's what you're talking. I mean, there's just, they're right. They don't seem to be fans.
Don't like babies.
I think Paul Anka said it best when he said, having my baby, what a lovely way of saying you're an environmental terrorist.
I remember that song.
Remember that?
I don't.
Great song. Beautiful.
Having my baby. Yeah, I remember that.
We got to take a break. Back in a minute.
What a lovely way of saying you're an environmental terrorist.
I like the remake.
All right, don't forget, go to wherever you get your audio podcast, subscribe, rate, and review the news and why it matters. It will help more people be able to find the show and listen and get the news and then see why it matters. That's what we do here. And also, to feed into your ego, we also might read your reviews live on air, which is, I know, why you guys are all coming. But that's okay, we'll take it. We've got one today from The Cooler. I absolutely love this show on a daily basis, and if I can't get Pasaki Pasucks regularly by Becca Stottle, I'm good with Pat and Stu. Stu says I need 5 stars, praise Pat and Stu, and saying bad things about Jeffy to be read on air. So, Jeffy smells too much food. You promised. Sarah, you're awesome too, but I eat too many Built Bars because of you. You guys are awesome. So there you go. Jeffy, bad things about Jeffy. What, he can't count to 8? He can't count higher than 18?
18 is the highest number, yeah.
It's not that he can count to 18. That's the only number he knows.
That's
That's
the
the only number he knows.
Okay, okay.
He may know another number, but we don't know what it is.
All right, we've got another one from Nancy. I love this podcast. Yes, Pat and Stu Thursday is my favorite. The 3 of you together are great. Stu is whatever. Thankfully, Pat carries his weight. Thank you for bringing the news. The MSM does not.
So I suck and I'm fat? That was a really negative review. I reject your review, Nancy.
But you give us 5 stars, so we'll take it. So thanks, Nancy. And then, of course, we do see all of your It's Great Whatever reviews out there, which this guy.
Thank you very much.
This freaking guy.
Haunt Sarah's mind and say it's great.
Please don't.